So good morning. Ms. Lee, I'd like to start with you if that's okay. So, Ms. Lee, I understand you're 21 years of age, is that correct?
I'm now 22.
Now 22. And at the time of the events in question, being January and February of this year, you were 21?
Correct.
All right. And you said already you're a public servant. You work for the Government of Canada?
Yes, that's correct.
And you worked for the Government of Canada during the protest period, is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what do you do for your employment for the Government of Canada?
I'm a data analyst.
And with which ministry or department are you with?
Objection. What's the relevance to this line of question, Commissioner?
I'm not sure it's relevant or not, but it seems to me that it's not unreasonable.
Well, I personally don't feel there's, the actions I took was in my capacity as an individual citizen of Ottawa and not related to my work or any other activities.
Right, I understand that, but what department were you with and what were you doing for work for the Government of Canada at the time?
I was a data analyst with Shared Services Canada.
Shared Services Canada?
Correct.
Okay. And what ministry does that come under?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I understand that you know Ottawa City Councillor Catherine McKenney, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And I also understand that you know NDP member of Provincial Parliament for Ottawa Centre, Joel Harden, is that correct?
Correct.
And from some public articles, I also understand that you were introduced to lawyer Mr. Paul Champ sometime between January 28th, 2022 and February 4th, 2022. Is that correct?
Could you repeat the dates, please?
January 28th, 2022 and February 4th, 2022.
Correct.
Okay. And what date were you introduced to Mr. Champ?
I believe it was a Friday, so whichever date that Friday fell on.
Okay. And so someone introduced you to Mr. Champ, correct?
Mr. Champ had reached out to me.
Okay. And is it not true that it was Ottawa City Councillor Catherine McKenney who put you in touch with Mr. Champ?
That is untrue.
Okay. And I understand that you were the recent co-chair of the 2002 Leaders Summit for Action Chinese Canadians Together. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as part of that summit, I understand you gave a video statement about how you became who you are today. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And it focused on the protest in Ottawa and becoming the lead plaintiff in the class action that you filed. Is that right?
Correct.
And there you described becoming the lead plaintiff in the class action as a fateful and surreal story. Is that right?
Correct.
And you said there you had the opportunity to make a difference, right?
Correct.
And you said that the lawyers needed a plaintiff.
Correct.
Right. And so you were asked to be the lead plaintiff. Is that fair?
Correct.
Right. And was there anybody else other than Mr. Champ who was asking you to be the lead plaintiff?
Emily Tamman, who works with Paul Champ.
All right. And so Mr. Champ reached out to you randomly. How did Mr. Champ get in touch with you?
It was as a result of the meeting I had organized with the Ottawa Police. One of my fellow residents and neighbor was a lawyer who was aware of the action being taken.
Okay. And so I just want to take you back as well to that speech you gave with the Leaders Summit for Action for Chinese Canadians Together. Just let me know if this is correct, what you said. This is how you described the protest. It was insane. It was the strangest Twilight Zone purge scenario where people weren't quite purging, but the opportunity was there because there was just no laws being enforced. So it was this crazy, crazy thing with hot tubs, with right-wing extremists, and then right-wing moderates as well. And then your confused average grandmother saying, oh, isn't this really a great time? I wonder what the air raid sirens are for. Those are your statements, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And when you say purge scenario, for the folks at home as well as anybody here, I take it you're referring to the film series, The Purge, right?
Yes, just in reference to the lack of laws that were in place.
Right. And it was your belief that the protest provided a purge opportunity. Is that fair?
I would not say that the protest or occupation provided a purge opportunity, but what I witnessed on the streets day to day was very reminiscent of that kind of lawless world where open fires were being held, laws were being broken in front of police officers who were not doing anything to combat them, and just a general sense and lack of disregard for public areas and really the people that live there.
Okay. But again, you said earlier, and you admitted that you stated it was the strangest Twilight Zone purge scenario where people weren't quite purging, but the opportunity was there, correct?
Yes.
Right. So you believe that the opportunity was there for a purge type scenario. Is that right?
I believe the opportunity was there, and it was an environment where these people who had been illegally occupying our streets felt that they had I don't know if this is the right word, they had the ability to do anything they wanted, as they were not privy to the regulations that the rest of us members of society were. And I came to this conclusion through my witnessing of these crimes being committed, because really they were crimes. And even speaking with these individuals directly, who had informed me that they were not going to face any consequences because they were protected.
Okay. So in the movie The Purge, you agree that it's about that for one day in the United States, called The Purge, that there are no laws in force and the population can commit murder, which is the purge. Is that right?
That is correct, but I was not referencing the entirety of the purge. It was a purge-like scenario where laws were not enforced specifically.
And a purge opportunity was available.
Yes, because laws were not being enforced.
Right. So people could potentially commit murder. That was your concern.
I did not make that statement.
All right. And you then, I understand from your evidence that you've provided to the commission prior, from your statement, I understand that you started to hear honking on Friday, January 28th, right? Or January 28th, 2022.
Correct.
All right. And when you provided the statement to the commission, did you provide it yourself?
Yes.
They interviewed you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I understand that you obtained the injunction on February 5th, 2022.
I think it's February 4th.
February 4th, 2022, you obtained the injunction to stop the honking, is that right?
Pardon me, the 7th. Pardon me, February 7th.
Well,
The injunction was obtained and approved by the court on the 7th.
Well, I understand there was an interim injunction approved for the first 2 days, and then on the 7th it was approved. Is that the correct facts, or would?
No, that is not correct. 2 days prior to the injunction being put in place, there was a deferral of the trial to that date where the injunction was eventually approved.
Trial. You said trial. I just want to clarify for the record. There was no trial. It was an application, correct?
Application. Sorry, I'm not well versed in law. I'm not a law student.
I understand. And then after you obtained the injunction, I understand that things got a little bit better, right?
For a brief period, shortly after the injunction, there was a clear silence from the noise that was previously constant. Shortly thereafter, there was a gradual ramp up in the honking again, but however, it was more strategic and intermittent than it was previously, whereas it was constant.
Okay. And so you said you gave your statement to the commission before you testified here today, right?
Yes.
And when you gave your statement, you knew you had to be truthful?
Yes. And
when you gave that statement, of course, you wanted to include all important observations and interactions that you had with the protesters. Is that right?
I just want to clarify the statement being in reference. Is that?
Sorry, I should clarify. She gave an anticipated statement. So it's a statement of anticipated evidence, not a witness statement. So it's not attributable to her. It's attributable to the commission, and that is different from a witness statement, which is attributable to the witness.
Right.
So I just want to clarify that.
Sure. And so when you provided the commission your statement, I take it that you would have told them all the important information that you wanted them to know?
As far as I was aware, yes, to the best of my ability.
Right. And
I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner. I do want to interject here. Our rules provide that there can be no examination on a statement of anticipated evidence without leave. And I think leave needs to be sought if there's going to be questions about that.
okay, I won't put the statement to her. I'll move on. I understand that you noticed the honking generally stop after the injunction was granted, though some trucks still honked intermittently for short periods of time. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. And so that's what happened after the injunction. Is that correct?
To the best of my recollection, correct. That was the immediate aftermath.
All right. Now, between January 28th and February 5th, 2022, did you attend your employment at the Government of Canada?
I was working from home, though I struggled to maintain productivity due to the disturbances that were taking place.
Right. And at the Government of Canada, I take it that you are on salary. Is that fair?
That is correct.
So between January 28th, 2022 and February 5th, 2022, you did not lose any income. Is that fair?
That would be correct. There was a leave code that was applied for government employees that were affected by the situation.
Okay. But prior to the situation as well, you were working from home. Wasn't that also under the general COVID policy for all Government of Canada employees?
Could you clarify the question, please?
So weren't you working from home prior to January 28th, 2022 anyway?
Yes.
Okay. And how long were you working from home from?
I had started a new position on January 10th with Shared Services Canada. Prior to that, I was employed working from home with another agency.
Okay. And what agency were you employed with before?
I was employed with the Canada Revenue Agency.
Okay. Canada Revenue Agency. And so from January 28th, 2022 and before, you were already working at home?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And moving on from sort of your background with working from home, I understand that you had the interactions with the protesters and you confronted them on Kent Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And when you confronted those protesters, do you remember saying to them, which was recorded, go back to where the fuck you were from?
I may have said that.
Okay. And I take it that you never saw any of the, or never said to the commission or saw any protesters or truckers physically harm anyone. Is that right?
There was only the, I would describe it as intimidation with a truck.
Okay. And you never said to the commission, and nothing in that regard with respect to seeing protesters or truckers threatening to physically harm anyone either, did you?
I did not make that statement.
All right. And you didn't say to the commission or see anything in your observations that could be classified as espionage or sabotage?
I'm sorry?
You didn't see anything that could be classified as espionage or sabotage?
No.
Thank you. And you didn't say to the commission or observe any of the protesters or truckers destroy or light a fire any buildings or anything like that?
Not inside of any buildings. No, just outside.
Outside. So you're saying that they were destroying the outside of buildings?
I did not say that. I said they were lighting fires outside of buildings, as in the bonfires that were all over the city.
Right. But they weren't trying to knock down any form of buildings or property or anything like that?
I can't comment to their intentions.
Well, I understand their intentions, but I submit you didn't see them do anything like that.
Nope, I just saw the fires, open fires.
Great. And you didn't see them try to destroy any other trucks or vehicles or light them afire or anything?
I did not.
Thank you. And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about that class action as well. So you became the lead plaintiff on February 4th when it was filed, correct?
Correct.
All right. And as of today, I understand there are only 3 other additional plaintiffs to that action. Is that right?
Correct.
And the first one is Happy Goat Coffee Company. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Happy Goat Coffee Company is a chain of coffee shops that has 3 coffee shops in the downtown area. Is that fair?
As far as I know, correct.
Thank you. And the second plaintiff is that got added is a numbered company, but it operates as Union Local 613. And I understand that's a restaurant and bar on Somerset Street. Is that
Correct.
right? All right. And the third plaintiff is a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Devani. Is that right?
Correct.
And he's a bartender and server at a restaurant in Byward Market.
My understanding is that he was employed in the Byward Market.
Okay. And that he doesn't live in downtown Ottawa, though?
Yes.
Okay. And so after you got the injunction on February 5th, I understand that both yourself and Mr. Champ began to offer the protesters and truckers an agreement that they could sign to be released from your class action if they agreed to leave. Do you remember that?
I would like to clarify that the injunction was granted on the 7th.
Okay. But on the beginning of the 5th as well, as I understand, you began to offer this release to the protesters and truckers. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. And so who was it that you had going out, handing out copies of this release to the truckers? Do you remember?
I am not aware of that information.
Okay. Okay. Did you know that Councillor McKenney was handing them out for you?
Now I do.
Okay. And now you do for me telling you, or did you know before this?
Well, it was a lot of events, and I think it was mentioned that McKenney was out doing this. However, I was not directly involved other than agreeing to offer this agreement.
Okay. And I understand also that you know the NDP member of Provincial Parliament for Ottawa, Senator Joel Harden. Do you know him?
Yes.
Right. And he was contacting people and organizing events to raise money for your lawsuit. Do you remember that?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And was it not the Ottawa City Councillor, Catherine McKenney, an NDP member of Provincial Parliament for Ottawa, Senator Joel Harden, who supported you and put you forward for that claim? Is that not correct?
That is not correct. I've stated that that was not true previously as well.
Right. And so I just want to bring you to sort of another statement that you had said when you were at the Leaders Summit for Action for Chinese Canadians.
I would also like to clarify that the Leaders Summit has not occurred.
Right. But you gave a video.
Yes, correct.
Right. So can you agree with me that you stated the following? It came about that the lawyers needed a lead plaintiff to stand up and speak about what was going on and really try to make a difference because we weren't seeing any change in our community, which was not acceptable for anybody. But being a Chinese Canadian, it is a bit of an odd role to play because it's not something that is really necessarily supported or common within our culture. But I really saw the need for anybody to stand up and speak for the people and help us out of the situation we were in. And the stars really aligned, and here I am.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you. Those are my questions for you, Ms. Lee. And then I just have a few for Ms. Lalonde.
Before you continue, would it be all right to clarify my relationship with Joel Harden and Catherine McKenney? No? Okay.
Judge, if His Honor would like, that's fine.
There'll be a brief opportunity to re-examine at the end, so.
So, Ms. Lalonde, good morning.
Good morning.
So, Ms. Lalonde, I understand just from your background, and I'm not trying to poke or anything of that, but I understand you were born around 1947 in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. Is that correct?
I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but grew up in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan, and you've asked women their ages. So
I won't, I'm not going to. I promise not to do that.
they can do the math.
Yes, all right. And I don't want to get into too much with your disability, and I'm very sorry for the struggles that you've had, particularly during the convoy and protest. But I understand that about 1961 is when you began to lose your sight. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And despite that, you thrived. You obtained a bachelor degree in psychology from the University of Saskatchewan in 1974?
That's right, yes.
Right. And you completed your law degree at the University of Saskatchewan in 1984?
1983.
83. And thereafter, you completed your Master's of Laws at the London School of Economics. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And how many jurisdictions are you a member of the bar and or a member of the solicitors group?
I was a member in good standing with the Ontario Bar and the New York Bar. But recently I resigned my membership from the Ontario Bar. I'm still active as a a retired member of the New York Bar, but I'm still licensed.
Right. And I understand that after becoming a member of the bar, you began to work for the government of Canada. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And you spent 10 years with the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs, Canada. Is that correct?
It was more like 25 years. Just let me recorrect that. It was from September 1990 to April 2011.
Okay. And then you were also with the Department of Veteran Affairs Canada. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And around that, in the 80s, you also incorporated a company called De La Ronde International Inc. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that company is still in operation?
Yes.
And is that company not a federal government contractor?
No.
No, but it does do government contracts and assists with, I believe, a lot of First Nations work. Is that right?
It could, yes.
And you worked as a lawyer for the government of Canada, is that right?
No, I was working on the policy side of the picture. I was not a justice lawyer with the government of Canada. I was an executive.
Okay. And I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Can you mind telling the folks what brought about your participation in this commission?
I had a phone call from the commission, from commission solicitor, asking my permission to, first of all, have a conversation about my experience, and then asking my permission if my name could be put forward as a potential witness in this commission.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions for both of you, and have a good morning.
Thank you, you too.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Brendan Miller. I'm counsel for Freedom Corp. I've been asked to make sure that we introduce ourselves before we start. I just have a few questions for you, and just so you know, most of these are what we call Brown and Dunn questions. I just need to give them to you so that there's some other evidence down the road, and I need to be fair to you, so I need to put a lot of this to you, okay?
Just to be clear, Brown and Dunn is simply that they put a statement to you that it may be contradicted later, so you should have a chance to comment.
Thank you for that clarification.
So yeah, sorry, I'm too lawyer.
I was trying to fake it till I made it on that one, so.
Well, it's good. It's good. You did a very good job. You sold me. So, okay. So I understand that after the protests, there was two funds set up. One being $20 million was set aside by the federal government to compensate Ottawa businesses affected by the protests, and another one for $10 million from the provincial government. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And to date, or at least as of June, I understand that of the federal government funds, only 8.6 million have been used. Is that fair?
I don't have that knowledge. I know a lot of my businesses took advantage of it.
I can't comment on the total, but I could state that the majority of my Main Street business, my storefront businesses did apply to the fund.
Okay. And of the $10 million provided by the province, I can't find if much of that was used. Can you tell us, do you know any amounts with respect to the amount of money that was used from the provincial funds?
No.
Okay, thank you. You had said in your evidence, ma'am, that Uber Eats wasn't available during the protests. I'm going to put it to you that it was.
Okay.
Can you, I'm giving you an opportunity.
I'm not sure.
That's the purpose of this. So
Right.
I want to be fair to you. I'm going to put it to you that Uber Eats, in fact, was operating during the protest and was, in fact, even delivering
Then
food to the protesters.
I would say there are likely times that Uber Eats was operating and other times on the weekends, which I think our businesses would deem to be the most busy times where a lot of them weren't. There was a lack of drivers. I know that was a major issue. And then because of the closures, there was zero access for it. So whether the app was open or not, I'm not aware, but I can tell you that many of our restaurants in Vanier and others could not use that service as a method to sell their food. And further to that, some would make the orders and they wouldn't be picked up. So there was an additional loss.
Okay. And did you yourself experience any inability to use Uber Eats?
I did not use Uber Eats in that time, no.
Did either of you have contact with Member of Parliament Mona Fortier during this time? That she, I believe, is the
Yes,
president of
she's
Treasury?
the MP that represents Vanier, so I do.
Okay. Yep. And I take it that when you contacted her at one juncture, you asked her to help you with respect to removing police blockades that were affecting the market and your area. Is that fair?
I did not know. That was not my request.
Now,
That may have been my colleague in the market, but it was not me.
and in the videos my friends from the commission played for you, those videos taken by you, you would agree that there was no honking or noise in the background in those videos, was there?
In some there were, not in those particular videos, but at times there was honking. There wasn't as much honking at Coventry, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what time? I saw all the videos, it was
Roughly
it was
6 p.m.
roughly 6 p.m. So,
Well, the first weekend, that was roughly 6 p.m. On the second weekend, it was 9 a.m. in the morning.
okay,
So it depends. I was there at different times.
right. But you agree in both those videos, there's no loud noises, there's no honking while you're driving and taking those videos?
There was honking. Yes, there was definitely honking. There was some loud noises. Whether they were as loud as downtown, no, they were not. But there was definitely honking, and depending at times too. Also, yeah, no, there was not.
Right. And were you aware that on January 25th, 2022, the city of Ottawa received an email from the Hotel Association here in town stating that the truckers and protesters had booked stays for over 30 days?
I was not aware of the email, but I do know that Steve Ball from the Hotel Association was on many of our calls, especially in the third and fourth weekend and near the tail end of them. And he did make that aware to us. He also pointed out to the fact that there was a lot of hotels that couldn't be accounted for because they would be booked through third party.
Right.
So the hotels.coms or things like that.
So is it fair to say that, to your knowledge, that the municipality of the city of Ottawa knew on January 25th, 2022, that these protesters and truckers were intending to stay a lot longer than the weekend?
It appears to me that they should have known that, yes.
Right. And you had mentioned that you saw some folks pouring out urine and other fecal matter or what have you.
Just urine.
Yes, okay. And what date was that? Do you recall?
The date is on the video. I believe it was the second weekend, possibly the third weekend. I'm sorry, it's on the video, but
But it wasn't at the beginning.
it was not at the beginning, no.
Okay. Were you aware that the protesters and the truckers had applied for and had been given permits for porta potties originally, but those permits were then pulled?
I'm not aware of that, no. But I'm kind of happy to hear that at some point something was permitted, yes.
Well, that was the
Sorry.
beginning, at the beginning. And I just, again, trying to be fair to you.
Thank you.
And you had mentioned that you had seen or heard from some store owner that they had sold out of knives and bear spray. Is that right?
The Canadian Tire, yes, that's what
Okay.
it was told to me.
Is it fair to say, though, that you never saw any protesters or truckers running around waving knives?
Most of the people I know that hunt with knives don't wave them around.
Right, good. I
So
like
they
that.
would be concealed perhaps, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think waving around a knife states whether or not the knife exists.
All right,
Did I see the knife being waved around? No, I did not.
all right. And you never,
Do I trust that the Canadian Tire is telling me the truth? Yes.
and you never saw protesters with bear spray?
I was not in the heat of it on the last weekend, if that's what you're implying, no.
And despite that Canadian Tire had sold out of these items, you had no knowledge of who they sold all of these items to. Is that fair?
I had none, no.
So you don't know if you sold them to protesters, or if they sold them to local residents. Would that be fair?
I suppose that would be fair, yes. I mean, I suppose we could probably cross-reference credit cards at some point and figure that out, but I don't think that
Credit
is
cards,
the case.
well,
Well, I don't know.
I think
Purchases.
the feds will need to get another order for production for all that.
Likely. Way above my pay grade, sir.
Way above mine, too.
Thank you.
So I believe those are all my questions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to say good morning, but it's good evening. So I'll start with yourself,
By
Councillor.
introducing yourself.
Oh,
please.
first, hi, I'm Brendan from Alberta. I'm Brendan Miller. I'm counsel for Freedom Corp, of which is an organization that represents the protesters as well as the truckers that were in your city in 2022. So, Mr. Fleury, I want to start just asking you a few questions, if you don't mind. Do you remember sending an email on February 4th, 2022 to Kim Ayotte, Steve Kalinakokis, Keith Egile, Serge Arpin, Lucille Coulard, and Liberal Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre Yazir Naqvi, with a tweet from the former federal attorney general, Mr. Alan Rock, that stated the city should obtain an injunction to restrain the truck horns on the basis of nuisance? Do you remember sending that email?
Yes.
All right. And I understand that Mr. Ayotte, General Manager for Emergency and Protective Services for the City of Ottawa, replied to you. Is that right?
I don't believe so. I believe the answer came from Steve Kay,
From Steve Kay himself?
I believe.
Okay. And from your recollection, what was that answer?
All options are being looked at.
Okay.
Can the witness see the document? Is there a reason we are not putting it to him?
I was just asking if you remembered, and I'm not permitted to because I didn't seek leave prior. So that's under the rules. So in your evidence, you made use of a term you referred to as microaggression. Is that right?
I believe so, multiple times.
Okay. Is microaggression, is your understanding of that it means verbal and environmental slights?
Je suis francophone, donc si vous voulez être spécifique sur les mots, il va falloir que vous...
I'm francophone, so if you want to ask me specific things about words, you're going to have to ask me in French. You're asking me a theory about how to define something. Unfortunately, my knowledge of English terminology is perhaps not sufficiently appropriate, Commissioner.
Je m'appelle Brendan.
My name is Brendan.
I think, you know,
Okay.
it is funny, but it's not. I am doing my very best to answer clear questions in English. You asked me a very specific question on a definition. I'm saying, ask me, clarify in French, and I'm glad to specify if it is yes or no. The specificity of the nuance of a word, I'm uncomfortable in responding to your question.
What of the words that I put to you, and there's a few, so means, verbal, and environmental, and slights is confusing? Is there, which one are you confused about?
J'ai expliqué plusieurs fois que
I've already explained.
microagression, je sais pas si c'est la bonne terminologie, mais j'essaie de les exprimer.
Try to express this, and I've explained this to the Commissioner, that to my mind, everything in the periphery of the red zone was what I would describe as being microaggressions. I could describe microaggressions to you. For example, go in front of somebody and pull their mask off. I don't know how we want to describe that as a definition, but that's an example of a microaggression. Walking into a restaurant, being asked to leave and sitting down without having the right to stay, that's another microaggression. Fighting somebody who's homeless, beating somebody who's homeless, that's another microaggression, another type of aggression. Making so much noise at such high volumes that you have to close down a daycare, that's another kind of aggression. That's how I've described aggressions, Commissioner. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a background in specifics, but I'm trying to use the terminology that I can to be as specific as possible to describe what I received as information and what I was able to see.
Can you get him a pair of these so he can understand what I'm saying in English as well, please?
Oh, that's mean.
Is that possible? Do you need this? Would you like one of these for when I question you in English? Because I'm unfortunately incapable of speaking French.
And I will do my very best to answer in English, but it was a very, I don't need it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you had said that beating up a homeless person was an aggression, at least the translation. That's what it was. That's more of an assault. So had you witnessed any homeless people get beaten up by protesters?
No, if you recall my intervention, the Shepherds of Good Hope is located at the corner of King Edward and Murray. There was an incident with a client. The executive director reached out to me to inform me of the incident.
Okay. And were any charges laid?
I have no clue.
Okay. Who was the individual who was beaten? Do you know?
I have no clue.
Okay. Thanks. So it was in February 4, 2022, you get that email. Were you aware that Chief Solly, as well as the OPP, had recommended that the city get an injunction in January 31?
I don't believe I was.
Okay. And both of you, I take it, none of you were on the police commission, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you understand that as general counsellor, not in the police commissioner involved with the police. Again, my friend was trying to clarify that with you. The police are independent of the city, and they can't share information that they know or their plans with you. Do you know that?
Absolutely.
Correct.
My interventions relate to information I have from my community and reports that my community residents and businesses did to the Ottawa Police, and making sure that it's getting the attention and awareness from authorities.
Okay, thank you. So those are some of my questions. The other one I had, what is your relationship with Zexi Lee? How long have you known her?
I've never met Zexi Lee except for when she was recognized as a community builder at City Hall by City Council.
Okay. And did you ever also assist, and I'll move on to yourself, Councillor, but with the distribution of the release agreements and the request of the protesters and truckers to leave under the auspices of signing a release from the injunction and claim that was filed by Ms. Lee?
You're asking me?
Yeah, did you?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for you.
Thank you.
Councillor, so I understand that you do know Miss Lee, is that right?
Yes, I met Miss Lee about a week after the occupation ended.
Okay, but prior to that, I understand that from some of the information that you were handing out some of those leaflets for them to sign and to leave. If they signed it, they would be released from the class action lawsuit. If they left, you were assisting with that.
Yes, that was not at the time. I had not met Zexi Lee. I had friends who had been working in the community, and I agreed to go out with them to try to encourage some of the people who were parked on Kent Street to move along to avoid being part of that class action.
Okay, thank you. And I think a lot of these have actually, my friend has got through most of them. When did Chief Solly advise you that he needed 1,800 officers? Do you remember when that was?
I can't tell you when it was. I do recall that he said that.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that he asked for that around February 8th, 2022?
It would be fair to say that. I can't say that that's the exact date, yes.
And so just to clarify, so when you made that motion in the special council meeting with respect to having the Ottawa Police Service be taken over by the RCMP, that was on February 7th, 2022. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Right. And why did you choose the RCMP and not the OPP?
At the time, I was desperate to do anything to bring order into the residential areas. I saw the area around Parliament as being the responsibility of the federal government, and that is why I asked for federal assistance, which was the RCMP.
Right. And in some of the records, a colleague of yours, I believe you know him, NDP member, Provincial Parliament, Joel Harden, he was contacting members in the community and members in the council trying to raise money for the claim of Miss Lee. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. And one more question, actually, for you, Mr. Fleury. You had said earlier in your evidence that individuals and persons couldn't live in the space where the protesters had set up. Is that right?
Yes.
So how did the protesters live there?
A big rig, as you know, is quite a significant space. And what we saw was very creative ways to live in those spaces, or in the cab, or so. Yeah, I mean,
so
not sure where you're.
These individuals that are living there in the area, of course, are in their houses and as well as in their apartments, correct?
Who are the individuals in this case?
You said it wasn't livable for the residents, correct?
Correct.
Right. but they're living in their houses, and these truckers and protesters are living in their trucks, right?
You're saying that, yeah?
Okay. You would also define the trucks as weapons.
Yes.
Okay. And how were those weapons used to assault anyone or hurt them, other than the horns and the diesel you've already spoken about? Is that it?
The physical nature of the vehicle, which is quite large, and the combination of those are a form of a fortress, a form of a weapon.
Okay, so it's your view that a truck sitting on the side of a road with somebody sleeping inside of it is a weapon?
No.
Okay, so
Talking about the circumstances that created the occupation and created for businesses to not be able to operate safely, for transit services to be able to serve residents of Ottawa, for residents to be able to live in their own units, in their own properties, and walk safely on the streets of Ottawa.
okay. How many individuals that you know of since the occupation or the protest has ended, did you know during that time that vacated their residences?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. And last question. Ms. McKenney, or Councillor McKenney, you talked about in your evidence in chief about a counter protest, correct? That you attended?
Yes, at
Right.
Billings Bridge on Riverside, yes.
And I have to put this to you, just, it's about fairness question, because there may be evidence about this later. Did you recall seeing at that protest a sign with one of the counter protests with a swastika on it that stated gas the vaccinated, gas the unvaccinated? Do you remember seeing that there?
I do not recall seeing that.
Thank you. Those are my only questions.
And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and press that notification button to receive more information like this. You can also follow me at yellowhead.vote to stay informed and get the inside scoop. Thank you.